The road twisted like a ribbon of guilt through the forest, narrowing until it was barely more than a track. Charles gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his eyes flicking nervously to the passenger seat. There, curled up and unsuspecting, was Jasper, a black and white cat with pale green eyes and a patient stillness that had once comforted him. The car's engine idled low as he reached a small clearing in Pine Hollow. No signs, no cabins, just trees whispering secrets to each other. He opened the passenger door. Jasper lifted his head, blinking slowly. "Go on, buddy," Charles whispered, his voice catching. "You'll be better off here. You're strong." Jasper hesitated but jumped down with grace. He sniffed the mossy ground, took a few curious steps, and turned to look at Charles. Charles forced himself to drive off, heart hammering as the rearview mirror shrank Jasper into a speck, then nothing. He didn't look back. But 2 days later, as morning fog coiled outside his front door, Jasper was there, muddy, tired, and dragging something behind him. Something small, something wrapped in faded yellow fabric. Charles staggered back. He knew that blanket. It had belonged to Emily. Charles stared at the bundle on his porch, paralyzed. The frayed edges of the yellow baby blanket fluttered gently in the breeze, damp with dew and forest soil. Jasper sat beside it, eyes trained on him, unmoving. He hadn't seen that blanket in years. It had belonged to his daughter. Emily had been 5 when they buried it with her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she held every night after the chemo left her too weak to walk. The blanket had gone into the ground with her, and now it was here. His legs buckled, and he sat on the steps, dazed. Jasper meowed once, not plaintive, not demanding, just a sound to break the silence. Charles reached out a trembling hand and touched the damp fabric. There was a tiny paw print in the mud beside it. "How?" he whispered, the word shattering the air like glass. He hadn't visited Emily's grave in nearly a year. He couldn't. The guilt was too heavy, not just for what happened to her, but for what he'd become after. Distant, bitter. A man who had tried to leave behind the last living thing that reminded him of her. But Jasper had remembered. He had found the grave, dug it up, and brought back a memory wrapped in earth and grief. That night, Charles didn't sleep. Neither did Jasper. They sat together by the window, watching the stars emerge one by one, silent witnesses to things unsaid. Charles didn't know what he was looking for as he returned to Pine Hollow, this time with Jasper in the passenger seat again, the yellow blanket folded neatly in his lap. The forest greeted them with the same rustling stillness, like it had been waiting. He left the car and followed Jasper through the trees. The cat walked with purpose, ears twitching, paws silent on the pine needle carpet. Charles stumbled behind, heart pounding. They walked deeper than Charles had dared before, past moss-covered logs and tangled roots, and then Jasper stopped at a hollowed stump. Beside it was a mound of freshly disturbed earth. At first, Charles thought it was another animal's den, but then he saw the shape, narrow, rectangular, a box, wooden, handmade. Jasper pawed at the dirt, revealing more of the lid. It looked old but intact, bound with rusted hinges. Charles dropped to his knees and unearthed it. Inside were photos of Emily, birthday parties, bubble baths, her tiny fingers gripping his. Letters she had written in crayon, a music box he hadn't seen since the hospital days. The scent of lavender, faint and faded, rose from the velvet-lined interior. It was a time capsule, one he and his wife had buried after the funeral, one he had forgotten about in his spiral of grief. Jasper had found it. Jasper had remembered. Tears soaked Charles's cheeks before he realized he was crying. He wrapped the cat in the yellow blanket and held him close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. The forest said nothing, but Jasper purred. Charles couldn't bring himself to put the box back in the earth. He carried it gently to the car, as if it might vanish in the sunlight. Jasper rode beside him, a sentinel of memory and quiet resolve. At home, he placed the box on the kitchen table. For the first time in years, he let the silence wrap around him without resistance. He read the letters, Emily's crooked spelling, her innocent hopes, and listened to the music box's broken lullaby until the melody curled into stillness. Over the next days, something in the house began to shift. Charles opened curtains long drawn. He dusted shelves, found forgotten photographs in drawers, placed them back on the walls. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was motion, a soft stirring of life. Jasper stayed close, as if knowing the house needed his quiet companionship to breathe again. Then one night, just past midnight, Jasper bolted upright at the window. Charles followed his gaze. Outside, just beyond the porch light, stood a figure, still, watching, his heart stilled. It was too tall to be a child, too motionless to be a passerby. Charles stepped outside, the cold night air biting his skin. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. But Jasper hissed, and the figure slipped into the trees. The next morning, Charles drove back to Pine Hollow. He had to know, had to understand what Jasper had brought back into his life, and what else might be out there. The forest felt colder now, not in temperature, but in presence. Charles followed Jasper's lead again, deeper than before, until they reached a fork where game trails crossed like veins. Jasper turned left. There, hidden beneath brambles and earth, was something far more recent than the time capsule. A campsite, primitive, scattered with cigarette butts, rusted cans, a torn sleeping bag. And something else, a tattered notebook, half buried. Charles pried it loose and opened it. Inside were scribbled pages in erratic handwriting, ramblings about the girl with the blanket and the cat that watches at night. Pages turned from delusion to obsession. The final entries were drawings of a cat with pale green eyes and a child, always wrapped in yellow. His blood turned cold. Whoever this man was, he'd seen Jasper, and somehow, something more. Charles snapped the book shut. They needed to leave, but Jasper didn't move. He stared into the trees, low and alert. And then Charles saw him, the same figure, closer this time, watching again. Charles froze. Jasper let out a low growl, a rare guttural sound that made the forest hold its breath. The man stepped forward. His face was lean, hollowed by time or obsession. He looked at Charles with eyes that didn't blink. "You came back," he said. His voice was dry, like bark stripped from a tree. "I don't know what you want," Charles said. "She wants you to remember," the man whispered, then pointed at Jasper. "He listens. He saw her. She walks here still." Charles stared. "Who?" "The girl, the one wrapped in yellow." "She's not angry," the man said. "She waits." With that, he turned and walked into the trees, vanishing like smoke. Charles didn't follow. He couldn't. That night, Charles dreamed for the first time in years. In it, Emily stood at the edge of the forest, holding the yellow blanket, smiling. Jasper sat beside her. When he awoke, Jasper was on his chest, purring softly, eyes watchful. Spring arrived gently. The time capsule sat on the mantel now, its contents cleaned and honored. Charles had begun writing letters to Emily, just as she had once written to him, not for answers, but for connection. He visited her grave again, this time with flowers, and Jasper by his side. He laid the blanket gently at the foot of the headstone, not to give it up, but to share it with the one who had first made it sacred. He spoke aloud, not caring who heard. "I'm still yours. I always was. Thank you for sending him back." Jasper rubbed against the stone, then against Charles. And in the hush of the afternoon woods, as light sifted through the trees like golden threads, Charles felt a weight lift. Not gone, but shared. The cat had come back with something chilling, but also something else: hope.